£827 million. Gone in weeks, wiped out by one trader, 28 years old, in a single Singapore office. Roughly twice the entire trading capital of the bank that employed him. A bank 233 years old. It had financed Britain's wars and banked the Queen. He ended it in weeks. Here's the part that should keep you up at night. This wasn't a genius, forging documents the world couldn't decode. The bank's own auditors had written it down in plain English. Twice, months before the collapse, they named the danger. They named the man. And the people paid to act on that warning read it, nodded, and chose to look away. Keep that warning in mind. To feel the size of this, go back to 1762. Francis Baring founds a merchant bank in London. It bankrolls Britain's campaigns against Napoleon. It lends to governments. It becomes so woven into the establishment that people call it the Queen's Bank. By 1990, it has survived for 233 years. Empires rose and fell around it. It did not. A bank that old doesn't think it can die. That's the trap. Centuries of survival become an alibi for not checking the books. Barings carried itself like an institution, too proud and too permanent to be undone by anyone, let alone a junior employee on the other side of the planet most of the board had never met. That confidence was the first crack. Enter Nick Leeson, working-class kid from Watford. No university degree, hungry and sharp. In 1992, Barings sends him to Singapore to run Barings Futures. And here is the fatal decision, the one everything else hangs on. They put him in charge of the trading floor and the back office that checks the trading floor. The player and the referee. The same man. In any working bank, these jobs are kept apart on purpose. The trader makes bets. A separate team confirms them, settles them, checks the math. That separation is the immune system. It's how you catch the one person lying. Leeson controlled both halves. So, when he decided to hide something, there was nobody independent left in the building to catch him. Almost immediately, an account appears. Number 88,888. 5 8s. In Chinese culture, 8 means luck and prosperity, which is a dark joke, because account 88 was where Leeson buried his losses. Trades that went wrong didn't get reported up to London. They got swept into the 5 8s account and quietly hidden. To everyone above him, Leeson looked like a star. The numbers flowing back to London showed a young trader printing money in Asia, beating every desk in the firm. Management was dazzled. Bonuses got paid on his fake profits. Nobody wanted to interrogate the golden boy. The losses were real and growing in 888888. The profits everyone celebrated were fiction. Now the warning I told you to remember. In August and again in October of 1994, Barings' own internal audit puts it in writing. Leeson controls both the front office and the back office. This, they write, exposes the bank to error and fraud. The actual word, fraud. They recommend splitting the roles immediately. This is the loaded gun, fully described months early. And management does nothing. Why? Because fixing it meant clipping the wings of the man, making them all rich. The auditors handed them the answer, the timeline, the exact failure point. Acting on it felt like punishing success, so the recommendation got filed. The roles stayed merged. The people paid to catch it were warned in writing, and they looked away. By early 1995, Leeson is deep in the hole and desperate to climb out in one move. On January 16th, he places a huge bet called a short straddle on the Nikkei, Japan's main index. In plain terms, he's wagering the market will stay calm and flat, parked around 19,000. His entire recovery plan now depended on the single thing markets almost never do. Nothing happening. No shock, no surprise, no headline. He had bet the bank literally on boredom. The trade went down on January 16th. The next morning was January 17th, 1995. At 5:46 in the morning on January 17th, the ground under Kobe, Japan, tears open. the Great Hanshin earthquake, magnitude around 7.2. Thousands die. A modern city is shattered. And in Tokyo, the Nikkei does the one thing Leeson bet it wouldn't. It panics and falls more than 7% that week. His calm market bet detonates. A disciplined trader takes the loss and walks away. Leeson does the opposite. He doubles down. He buys tens of thousands of Nikkei futures, trying to physically shove the index back up toward 19,000 by force. One man against the entire market, trying to lift a falling country. It's a martingale, the gambler's logic. Double after every loss until you win or die. To hold those giant positions, the exchange demands cash, margin calls. So Leeson calls London and asks for money, claiming it's to cover trades for clients, and London wires it. In January and February of 1995 alone, headquarters sends roughly £742 million to Singapore. They believed they were funding customer business. They were funding the fire. And no one in London matched those enormous cash demands against what a legitimate client book should ever need. This was the same blind spot the auditors had flagged a year earlier, now hemorrhaging real money across an ocean in real time. Every wire made the hole deeper. The bank was financing its own destruction and calling it client service. It couldn't hold. The losses blow past £800 million, more than everything Barings has. On February 23rd, Leeson runs. He leaves a note on his desk reading simply, "I'm sorry," and flees Singapore with his wife. Auditors crack open account 888 and find a crater, around 2.2 billion Singapore dollars gone. On February 26, 1995, Barings is declared insolvent and put into administration. 233 years, finished in a weekend. The Bank of England's governor, Eddie George, scrambles to arrange a rescue and fails. And here's the cruelest part. Even after collapse, the bleeding continued. As the trap positions were closed out, the loss didn't stop at 827 million. It climbed. So what does a 233-year-old bank sell for once it's poisoned? £1. On March 6th, the Dutch bank ING buys Barings for a single nominal pound and assumes all the liabilities. The oldest merchant bank in Britain, the bank that financed the wars against Napoleon, changed hands for less than a sandwich. Leeson didn't get far. Arrested in Frankfurt while fleeing through Asia and Europe. Extradited back to Singapore in November 1995. A judge named Richard Magnus sentences him to 6.5 years in Changi prison. He serves about 4 years and 4 months, released in 1999 for good behavior. Behind bars, he's diagnosed with colon cancer and survives it. The official inquiry was blunt. The unsplit front and back office was a most serious failing. Not Leeson's cleverness, the structure that let him operate unseen. Barings didn't fail to catch a brilliant fraud. It chose not to look at the one man making all its money. That single sentence is why every bank on earth now separates the trader from the referee. And once you see this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Leeson hid losses because nobody independent was watching the till. But that's just one way to lie to the people paid to check your books. Take Enron. It didn't hide losses. It invented profits out of thin air, building imaginary earnings while its accountants signed off, until the entire energy giant collapsed. We pulled that whole story apart. If Barings shows how hidden losses kill a bank, Enron shows how invented profits kill a corporation. And if you want the most chilling version, watch Wirecard, a modern German tech darling that didn't hide losses or inflate profits. It faked the cash itself. Nearly 2 billion euros that simply never existed, waved through by auditors for years. 3 frauds, 3 different lies, 1 identical failure. The watchdogs were warned, and every single time they looked away. That's the through line of everything we do here. The numbers tell you what happened, but the real story is always the people who were supposed to be watching and weren't. If that's the kind of story you want, subscribe to Florintide for the stories behind the numbers. The next collapse is already being ignored by someone right now.